well is obviously extremely talented.
Something I like with both of them was their positioning in setting up for 1v1s, and their planning for knowing exactly what your opponent is going to try and go for next. So for the Shy, he very clearly has very good dodging, where he'll keep the mouse extremely close to the character model to keep the small movements so that he can.
You can say that in their 3-0, he played Lee Sin, Taliyah, Jarvan. So he did show new stuff. I thought his Taliyah and Jarvan were both very clean.
I think his Lee Sin game as well. He's
really
had
good,
some bad ones, but that one was
that
really
was a
good.
step up.
So yeah.
And to be fair, he also has like 17 unique champions played this year, right? So it's not that he's never played any others. Those were certainly his preferences.
Champion pool and
I do
effective
agree.
champion is, of course, that.
For sure. And it is then, a discussion of
judgment
like,
calls and stuff
exactly.
like that.
And, one bad game does not necessarily mean he's not good at Lee, as he obviously showed he could play in the quarterfinals. But I really agree with you that I think Broxa, and I would even add in controlling support and Hillsang, because like when you look at how they played previously, Rookie, yes, Caps did blind pick as mid laner in all three of those games, but Rookie was like handling Caps.
See, the mid lane discussion that I'm sure Jat's going to usher us to is going to be an interesting.
You should take us there right now.
Yeah, I mean, we can go there, because it's like, I do think that, when you start to talk about the mid lane, and you have to look at those three matchups, and yes, it was, 3 blind picks from Caps, but Rookie was dominating that mid lane, and it wasn't Caps winning in the 1v1. It was Fnatic's superior team play in the groups that really turned that lane around from a place where Rookie was up 30, sometimes, even edging into 40 CS, getting a 1v2 kill in the LeBlanc game. But Fnatic did a much better job of bringing pressure from elsewhere on the map and supporting Caps. And then Caps, kind of paid that back tenfold as the game went later and once he caught up. But that becomes so much about how the other people are doing, right? Because if you can isolate that lane, if you can have it just be pure Rookie versus Caps based on what we've seen, you have to favor Rookie. And you have to then be able to track Broxa, as you're saying, and not allow Broxa to come in and affect that. Now, not allow Fnatic to have the pushing lane, so Hillsang can't just roam up and try to attack that as well. And, one of the things I did see in the IG versus G2 series was a higher priority on vision and controlling around mid lane. And I felt like that was somewhat as a result of what had happened to them in the Fnatic series. There was much more emphasis on getting like multiple pinks around Rookie. We saw like, one of the games where it was G2 having a pushing lane, there was actually 3 IG pinks around mid lane, like essentially on the right side of mid lane to protect from roams coming up from the bottom lane, from Wooded, who was trying to kind of emulate that same sort of style that we saw from Hillsang. So I think I have seen IG learn somewhat from the kind of how they fall prey to Fnatic, and I think that vision battle and who can kind of control those extra factors is going to become so big because the solo lanes from IG are so damn talented that you just feel like if you can keep it into a true 1v1, it has to be looking like it's in their favor.
Do you think we'll see LeBlanc? Or
yes,
because there's so many things you feel like you have to ban sometimes, right? But we saw LeBlanc as an Aurelia counter, which worked very well for Rookie. But then eventually we saw Caps and Rookie both willing to just first pick it. And we were kind of having this discussion last night. The LeBlanc just feels so strong in the hands of either Caps or Rookie. Like the fact that specifically we were wondering how Caps landed that chain in the top lane gank when he killed Echo, and it's like he was just point blanking his distortion and putting the chain model like in the opponent. That's how they got first blood on Lissandra. That's how they got the gank top. Like both of these guys' command of LeBlanc just feels so high. So your answer was yes. Why will we see LeBlanc and it will not just be banned?
So LeBlanc is kind of unique when it comes to these OP picks we talk about, because almost all the other ones are flex picks, right? They can go top or mid lane, whereas LeBlanc is that pure mid laner. There really is few matchups that you can go into it that you can categorically win the lane. And if you're going to go for a super win lane pick, it's going to definitely not be a flex pick. And when it comes to containment picks, which we've largely seen that kind of try and fit the meta with some strong engage, things say Lissandra, for example, has been tried a lot of times with some strong engage. Things say Lissandra, for example, has been tried a lot of times with some strong engage. Things say most kill pressure, and she's either able to initiate a counter gank or just self-ult and not die. But she's so short range, and LeBlanc has such an effective threat range with just even the tether and how much damage the junglers do, that she just has so much power as a pick, and you trying to rack your brain for things that people have used in the past against LeBlanc. You think of things like Syndra, of course, and Cassiopeia sometimes. All these picks are feeling more and more tertiary where the meta is, and just given the headaches around it, it's either going to be perma-banned, or I think maybe teams will try to trade it and just eke out one win against it to try to tip the balance of a best of 5.
Well, the biggest advantage for me for LeBlanc is that unlike a lot of these other assassins, she has so much versatility in either being able to set up a gank when her jungler is there, ganks, because she doesn't have to use that distortion. Like if they're not if the jungler hasn't been tracked, right? So I just feel like she works best with and against junglers, and the junglers have been so important, just ganking more often than we have seen in any other worlds. The earliest First Bloods, the most frequency of ganks, and Lissandra can, if it's an isolated 1v1 and you know there's no junglers, push the minion wave, and have this big AoE and be able to, get pressure like this and slowly get some, CS lead. But the fact that the chain, like you're talking about the tether range, you can't
more than flash, baby.
You can't even flash out of it, and like it'll still connect there. And then after you're rooted for something like a Lee Sin Q to come in, or any sort of these follow-ups. That's why it really does feel like LeBlanc's advantage is that she has so many options.
And also, again, consider what's around the LeBlanc in the meta right now. The junglers do a lot of damage. Xin Zhao, for example, very reliable damage. If that tether hits, Lee Sin's hitting the Q, and that's fine there. Top laners are squishy as well. There's no top lane tanks. There's so many people who are susceptible to LeBlanc, and if LeBlanc goes top lane, gets that kill, the turret goes down, everything falls into place, and then your lane assignment with LeBlanc around the flexibility you're alluding to is kind of wherever you need her. Like, she does provide something everywhere. She has instant wave clear with her RW now with the change. So given all of that, why not LeBlanc is kind of the thing we're falling into.
I would say I'd be super excited to see things like LeBlanc versus Aurelia, because Aurelia can definitely solo kill LeBlanc as well.
What are the solo queue picks here? Because I think we've had a new pick every round.
Malzahar is a pick, but I don't think either of these guys will put themselves on Malzahar.
What about Zed? Because Zed versus LeBlanc used to work pretty well.
It's true, but stopwatches on literally every champion nowadays.
I'm just saying we need to think ahead here, because the Victor kind of took us off guard, right? And now we're seeing other stuff come up in the semis, the Victor triplet.
So if we're trying to like
Cassin, if you're trying to, but it's like the game's too fast.
And we've already seen Kuro try that. It definitely should go better than Kuro was going.
Kuro played very bad.
He was very bad.
Blew his flash like level 2.
He was very scared.
Maybe even level 1, and then got...
I'm not defending.
So I think Cassidy, like you're saying, that is a possibility to try and scale.
But is the game still
later? If we're trying to throw out random picks, that we might see that we haven't seen.
Give us Kobe.
I still want to see some Fizz. Fizz is an assassin that I think is viable right now that we haven't seen a lot of. So maybe the champs select the bans start to pile up enough that we get to see something like that. But I do think Fizz in his current state is definitely viable and could throw his hat into the ring there as far as the rest of the assassins that we're seeing, because he is very good at taking down most other assassins. A lot of it has to do with the way his ultimate works, and being able to land as soon as you have that on someone, like LeBlanc, you're not going to lose the vision. You're not going to, you go all in, and the burst damage is mostly there.
And the buffed point blank damage, right? So you can actually just queue into ult, like, and do the point blank ult, and that actually got buffed a while ago. So that is definitely a good one. I definitely do agree, though, that the best like solo queue is Malzahar, but I don't see these guys as Malzahar picks.
Crown's gone.
I also think, though, that like as much as we're talking about the Lissandra thing, like not working out as well, Jensen was still like 20-30 CS ahead with them getting that kill, with the with Broxa coming in and being able to gank and pressure him much more heavily than Sven Skaren was able to be involved.
True.
And Rookie, I think has certainly shown he has played better than Jensen. If you can play well around it, like Rookie has played 3 Lissandra games at Worlds. They all looked pretty strong. Like, I do think you can just answer with the Lissandra still. I think that there is a lot of ways for LeBlanc at the highest levels to be successful, because the skill cap on this champion is just immense. But that being said, it's still, I think, not an easy matchup into Lissandra. And if you have like a jungle that can play heavily around mid lane and wants to play heavily around mid lane, as I think IG is going to try to do in this series, to try to counteract Fnatic's roams of Fnatic attacking there, as we saw in the previous matchups, then I think it's totally reasonable to go for a Lissandra and try to go for something like a Lee Sin or a Xin Zhao and be sitting around mid lane. Because if that LeBlanc doesn't get those kills, if that LeBlanc does get locked on their turret and you have to go into the team fight stage, I think that is where it becomes much more difficult to execute on those plays. And yes, certainly there are opportunities if you can get vision and come from behind and these sorts of things, but if you don't have that lead, if you don't have that advantage, I think it's so difficult to team fight into stuff like Lissandra.
It's true. And so here's what we know. We've been hyping the rookie Caps matchup since before the tournament. It delivered in the group stage, but coming into the semifinals, we were actually saying the two best performing mid lanes at Worlds were Rookie and Perks. Rookie smashed Perks, and I do feel like Caps had a resurgence, so to speak, in the semifinals, kind of regained a lot of the reputation with how well he performed. So again, it's going to be that showdown. And the last time they met, we talked so much about red side and red side counterpick. And now we're seeing Aurelia, Akali, LeBlanc as all potential first picks that could go mid lane. Do we have any indication on which ones we'd want to see, which ones we should see, which team should pick red side versus blue side? Because these are decisions that Fnatic and IG have to figure out in the next few days.
I think we need to rewind, though, because, again, we were talking about candidates to, Rookie X, for example.
Yeah.
Rookie's always been this discussion of the top two. I feel like every mid laner that's run into Rookie has been outclassed in the 1v1. Like, yes, Fnatic were able to win around it, but that's the ultimate. Like, if you just look at the post-game thread and you look at the CS numbers and the kills, you're like, oh, wow, he won the matchup. But you go back and watch the VODs, 30, 40 CS, like Azale was talking about earlier, is the lead there. The only time where I've felt like Rookie didn't have agency both over his matchup and also in terms of getting the roam off were the two Urgot games that Yukao played, which is a complete negating pick, right? We've had anti-carry as a meme.
Cowl.
Exactly. As negating as possible. Urgot with Cal, he can push, he doesn't die. Against LeBlanc, it sounds a bit terrifying with the tether.
There was one other time, the tiebreaker match when Fnatic first picked Akali against his LeBlanc, actually, the Akali won the lane.
But he was down
30 or 40 CS, and he got a 1v2 kill.
Yes. I watched through the VODs just before he came on.
He was, like, the
Akali like snowballed
really well around
through it.
And yeah, exactly. And Akali got to the point where she was definitely winning, but in the lane, she got slammed.
And that's kind of the thing we're seeing here is, like, Rookie has, I think, been uniquely good in the mid lane. I think this is easily his tournament if we're going to award a mid laner. And how do you approach that reality? If every candidate, including Caps in particular, has already had the struggles, do you throw in the towel in some ways and find a negating pick and try to deal with that? Or are you actually saying, okay, he's coming off a very strong performance in the semifinals, take the skill matchup again and rely on Broxah to be ahead? Because if Broxah falls behind compared to Ning, which did not happen in the group stage, but let's think of a different world where Broxah's shut down like he was against Haro, and you take a skill matchup, that feels very IG and Rookie favored. If you take a negating pick and jungle falls behind, at least you're saying self-contained, I can survive through. And that mindset, and even just how you approach game one with that kind of a, feels like almost like Russian roulette thing going on, is very interesting.
Also, you bringing up the if you're going to choose red or blue side,
right,
made me think of something I was thinking about earlier when we were casting the semifinals. Is when you're choosing side selection, you also now, I think more than previously, have to take into account how it does actually lay out the top lane. Because because top lane matchups right now are so, snowbally and are going to be a lot of carry champions. On blue side, you do have more protection from the way that the map is actually laid out. Red side has to deal with the tri-brush being behind them at all times. And we saw this a couple times where, junglers have multiple paths up there. They can go through the pit, behind the pit, through the enemy jungler. And so it does feel like, especially if you're taking volatile matchups, whereas previously I was like, red side, blue side, we have a lot of tanks up there. It's a factor, but it's not as big. Now, I think in addition to it playing into how you're going to pull off your champion select strategy, then you have to be like, okay, well, if we end up with this top lane matchup, am I going to have this wall at my back or am I going to have to take into account, all right, my jungler is going to need to do, X warding path to be able to secure that for me as well. Just is another layer.
I agree. And it's why red side mid lane counterpick is more valuable than red side top lane counterpick. And with how much flex picks are being used, you can make the biggest example of this was game 3 yesterday, where the top lane and mid lane were literally just swapping back and forth until 20 seconds, which is as long as they can go, but without swapping back.
Is that the first time that's ever happened, by the way?
That much swapping, I feel like.
Because they went down to the timeline.
Yeah.
There. For people that don't know, like, they have a rule that at 20 seconds, you're locked in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're forced into the matchup.
Crazy how, and all these guys, especially top lane and mid lane, can play a huge amount of champions. It does, I think, increase the value of blue side with your point there, with how many flex picks there are as well, because it's like you're not truly getting as counterpicked if you're picking flexible mid top, right? Because you can swap into the slightly more favorable matchup top lane if you really want to, and then still have the blue side top lane advantage.
And red side's advantage in the past was around stopping a Baron being taken, because red side was most able to put wards over the wall to just burst from behind the wall and try to contest the Baron with like a Lee Sin or come over the wall. But the problem right now is because there's no tanks to face check and contest vision, if you fall behind in vision, you kind of get blown up. And if you try and contest Baron, you kind of get blown up. We're seeing so few Baron steals in this tournament because teams are both getting smarter about the macro around it, but also having 2 or 3 people that, have that almost stat check moment where they say, well, if you walk up to me, I'm going to kill you. And because of that, because red side can't just repel the Baron as kind of a thing and extend the game, it does feel like that blue side quirk of the map is kind of being accentuated right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bot lane with Jackie and Baolan versus Reckless and Hilly. What's interesting to me about Fnatic, at least, is I do kind of feel like this is the perfect meta for Reckless. Previously,
Sivir, baby.
Previously, a lot of the criticisms of Reckless was, he doesn't really take over the early game. Like, you build completely around Reckless, you're putting too much pressure on him, or he's too passive. But that's exactly what you want out of an AD carry this tournament. You want a guy that you don't have to give jungle attention to. He's actually still been up in CS on average across the entire tournament, one of the best CSDs. And then he's able to offer the utility picks in the end. And Jackie, I feel like, has had more highlight moments for sure, especially with his flash forward against KT Rolster in the quarterfinals, but has been much less consistent, especially in their losses against Fnatic at the end of the group stage. So, Azael, what are your thoughts on the bot lane matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I think it's, it's kind of like high variance versus consistency. And Reckless in his interviews has talked pretty heavily about that. He's been talking about how, I think we're going to win because, he was talking about all the ADs and all the bot lanes in the semifinals. And he's saying, I don't make mistakes. Like, I'm the consistent player. Like, I think that they're going to kind of like mess up and I'm going to capitalize on that. And, even in that flash forward play that you're talking about, like right before that, he wasted his ultimate because he had if I recall correctly, 3 stacks of Braum passive on him. And he kind of just like walked forward and then was like, oh shit, I got to use this. And then, it's kind of risk versus reward. And I think the style that Reckless is playing, if you were IG, that is the style of bot lane you would want when you have the 2 best solo laners in the tournament, right? So it's kind of like they don't really have exactly what they want for this meta where your solo laners are so dominant. If you have a volatile bot lane that is trying to fight and is trying to get advantages, your jungle kind of needs to be down there playing around it, which is pulling attention away from what I think is their strongest point in the map. And I think that the style that Reckless is playing, and even like his proclivities of how he builds, like build attack speed early, push in the wave. Like that is the best style for focusing on the solo lanes as well. So I do think that Fnatic is very well suited for that. And if he has the push with Sivir and early Zerkagreaves and all this sort of stuff, it's also unlocking Hylissang to pressure mid lane. So certainly we saw them, I think, have the advantage in the previous series. I'll be interested to see if IG can kind of change that up by playing maybe a more aggressive pick to try to pressure or punish Reckless and Hylissang.
I think it's even more extreme than you guys are setting it up with. Reckless consistently
than you guys are setting it up with.
He actually was Tristana.
Consistently
than you guys are setting it up with.
He actually was Tristana.
Jackie Love kill himself and Reckless.
Jackie Love would walk near him and Reckless would be like, I see you. if I was Reckless, I mean, Reckless has already shown he's super confident, right? But I think specifically into this bottom lane, he is going to be very confident. And him and Hylissang have played extremely well. I think them together deserve a lot of the credit as far as Hylissang, especially with like Rakan setting up a lot of these plays. So the bottom lane, I think, for Fnatic is definitely going to be a big point of power that they can try and leverage. The question of will it be so confident that you have overconfidence and make a mistake yourself? I don't think that's the type
it's not their
of
style,
player
right?
he is. So that's why even that like cautionary tale doesn't come quite as much into it for me.
If I want to take the scientific method, I'm actually way more on your side in that if you just stare at specifically those 2 matches in a row, the last game of group stage into tiebreaker, you look at that and say, Fnatic will win because of bot lane difference. You're ready to say that. You're like, okay, this is all I'm looking at. You have to say that because I think Jackie and Bo5 are kind of all over the place in that series, and Reckless's champion pool's in a really good spot. I think Sivir might be the best AD carry at the tournament right now. The reason why I say that is there's so much threats that we've seen things like Kai'Sa fall away, because usually in the tank meta, there's tank top lane, there's a lot of things to apply the plasma. That's a very nuanced point, but there's always a moment to Killer Instinct into the back line where there's only, say, a tank or a support and maybe one threat and be fine. But in this particular tournament, whenever we saw iBoy try to Killer Instinct into the back line in quarterfinals, which of course drove him a lot of criticism, there were 3 different threats, including, say, a Xin Zhao or a Lissandra. Someone was always there to turn on him and do a lot of burst damage and kill him, compared to, say, MSI meta where Kai'Sa reigns supreme. You think of Sivir. Sivir stays out of threat range. She doesn't care about things like the Lissandra self ult, Alistar ult, things like that, because she's got Ricochet and can always just bounce things around. She'll always do damage, whereas Kai'Sa gets zoned out of damage. So given kind of what's going on in the bot lane, you say, okay, they beat them very cleanly through bot lane difference twice in a row, and now you're saying this as well. You can say that the jungle matchup will go a bit even, and you still think bot lane difference might be the Fnatic prediction. But we did see a shift from IG's bot lane after the fact. After they got slammed against Reckless twice, if you just judge based on quarterfinal and semifinal, so you control for the matchup, I think they made a lot of adjustments there. Jackie Love was away from the Kai'Sa mostly. I thought in general he was cleaner. The clutch moment, I'm going to just leave to one side because it was a clutch moment, a clutch flash that's pulled off. And there's another world where that doesn't get pulled off and they lose that game. But I think in general, they figured out the bot lane meta a lot more cleanly. They're not opting into the same sort of mistakes. They're not going to play Kai'Sa-based comps. There may be a Kai'Sa in a comp, but it's not going to be around Galio and just Kai'Sa in the late game being the carry. And because of that, I think the adaptations from the bot lane are the patchwork that could lead to an IG success. If the bot lane can match, suddenly we have a huge firecracker of a 5-game series. But if the bot lane is run over, then it's going to be a Fnatic comfortable victory.
You know what I want to see, and this isn't necessarily unique to either Jackie or Reckless, but if these teams are early picking tankless compositions, like we saw Fnatic do when they first rotation the LeBlanc and the Victor before the second ban phase, I want to see lethality Varus, because that thing got completely pushed out when there were no tanks. It has a strong laning phase. It is actually good against... We've seen it good against LeBlanc. You land one charged up Q in mid game, you take half of LeBlanc's health. She can no longer dash in and assassinate again. I don't know if we'll see it because it's quite a departure from the meta we've seen, and it is still potentially high risk because it's low mobility.
Yeah, susceptible to assassin.
You're so far away. Like, we've seen it as a mid lane pick even when tanks weren't that big, and I think it could actually work in the bottom lane. I just don't think someone's going to pull it out.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the main reasons we won't see it is that you have to be so confident if you're playing a marksman that does not have a dash or
versus Aurelia
in a world where Aurelia, Akali, LeBlanc, Lissandra, like all this stuff is flying around.
Yeah,
I do think it can work.
If you stay safe, it'll look good.
Yeah, I think it'll slam or be slammed.
Yeah.
You have to be so confident in that. You have to be like, I always think of Ruler, because when we were watching the like Gauntlet run, and he would point blank, keep landing Varus ultimates on Rakan, like standing right in front of his face with the ultimate charging, trying to get the knock up charge on him, and he seemed like very like nerves of steel situation. But yeah, I don't know if there's if that type of switch is actually going to come through.
And then you think of the cohorts here, the supports between Baolan and Hylissang. Gotta say, Hylissang has had a really good tournament.
Yeah.
This Worlds. His Braum, specifically in the Fnatic IG games where he roamed to mid and was the jungler when Brox could influence the matchup, he came in with Braum ganks, which is not usually a thing you think about. Alistar's usually the one doing that, but he found the roam timings there. I think Hylissang has been really on point. He's definitely a player that I think has some up and downs domestically, but his Worlds has been really high caliber. Meanwhile, Baolan has mostly been good, but the Rakan games are definitely the ones that really
They were exceptional.
the exceptional tier. I would say overall Hylissang has been better.
Yeah, I think he's been super good with having a very offensive orientation to his mind as far as the support, right? A lot of support players, across various metas have had very defensive mindsets.
How do I keep my guy safe?
But yeah, I think Hylissang, one of the things he does best is look for those opportunities. And if we're throwing out these, picks that may not be that likely, but we want to see, I'm thinking of offensive support picks. I'm thinking of Pyke.
He wants a Pyke World skin for sure.
Yeah, we've been. So you got to get one game.
Exactly.
In, right?
Do you have
If
to
someone's
actually play it?
banned
Is that a rule?
against you,
Yes.
if someone's
Is that a
banned
rule?
against you,
Huh.
does that count? Because someone did ban against him earlier.
So Haru played only Ezreal, and I believe he had to have Ezreal as his skin.
Ah,
So
so yeah, I
think you
didn't know
have
if
to
that was
play it.
actually an official rule or not.
Yeah,
The world skin rulebook.
I mean, Pyke would be so cool when you go
Yeah,
when
I
you
know.
do the ultimate. You're stamping Fnatic on their head. When you go on deep water dive, you could have your logo swirling around you and stuff.
I think to get a commemorative world skin, it's fitting that you actually play it in your world championship
yeah,
run.
no, it makes sense. It
Yeah.
makes sense. I just didn't know if it was a real rule.
Do you want it bad enough that if you're up 2-0 in the finals, you're like,
No,
But the money.
no,
I do 2-0. Hell yeah.
never in 1,000 years.
You,
I also
you gotta
think
get a good argument prepared in your head for the coach.
No, I'm like
oh
the-
yeah, it can really work here.
Alistair, you can all
Even
through
if
his
my,
ult.
even if
It's
my coach
beautiful.
told me to, I'd be like, nah, dog. I'm trying to win. I don't
Kobe's saying
care.
you
You
trick the coach into
Yeah,
doing it.
you mislead the coach.
yeah.
yeah, and I'm saying as the player, I would still wouldn't want to do it. I'd be like, all right, well, I'm getting a Malphite skin this year, but I'm gonna have a skin. It's gonna be in the game.
Okay, we talked about every single matchup. I think it's time to talk about who will be the 2018 world champion, Fnatic or IG. I think we talked about soul lanes. You're willing to give, if we're doing a report card, I'm giving top lane and mid lane edges to IG, and I'm giving jungle AD and support edges to Fnatic. But as we talked about, one little thing changes in any of these matchups, actually, and it could actually be enough to swing the matchup entirely. If IG's bottom lane dominates, right? If
Yeah.
Caps or Bwipo pull out big, if Broxa dominates the jungle, like so many of those things can switch.
Since you brought up scientific method earlier, one of the hard things about making predictions is you cannot actually apply
No.
the scientific
You
method.
can try though, Kobe.
in
And then you can get every prediction wrong.
because there's so many confounding variables
Yeah.
that we cannot hold the same. But that's what makes it exciting, right? Trying to play it out in your head, trying to come up with whatever your highest percentage is, or even trying to predict the upset.
And we are, 6 days out from the final, 5 days out from the final.
Yeah,
So
There
we have,
will
we
be a
have
lot
more
of
VODs to watch.
incomplete thoughts right now.
This is less than 24 hours after the conclusion of the last semifinal. Want to get the finals episode out the door as quick as possible. But what are first impressions? You don't even have to hold to your predictions by the time the final comes around.
For me, I am thinking because I felt like the way in which Fnatic beat IG last time was something that I felt IG showed a better response to, in their playoff run. I do favor them, but it's slightly because I think that, Fnatic has shown that they can play obviously certain different ways. And, me looking at it as, okay, I'm looking at it through the lens of if everything else is kind of the same. If the soul laners are winning as they did against Fnatic last time, and IG are able to protect those soul laners, then that should be IG's path to victory. But that's a big if, and that's why it's not like a confident prediction. It's a 3-2 at best because Caps certainly has the potential to beat Rookie, and we haven't seen what it looks like if Caps gets the counter pick, if Caps isn't blind picking, which could also really change the series. But I do think that IG showed that they know how to better protect their mid lane, when they played against G2, when they played against KT as well. And that to me is kind of what could be their edge because I do think they have the stronger soul laners. But if Fnatic is still able to influence that or just Broxah significantly outperforming Ning as he did before, Fnatic can easily win this. So this is honestly one of the hardest ones I've actually seen to kind of have a strong feeling one way or the other.
What's your guess?
I would say IG 3-2, but I think it could easily be a Fnatic 3-2. And you know, if Fnatic shuts down like all mid lane attempts, you know, if or rather is able to continue those and shut down like IG from kind of affecting those lanes, or if Caps is just beating Rookie 1v1, then I think all of a sudden the series could look very one-sided for Fnatic.
It's really tricky. I think people coming in with confident predictions here are really kind of hoping, you know, they're really putting too much into one variable. The way I look at it is, I think if you think back to how they matched up on that last day and you see JackeyLove and Bao5 match their performance from quarters and semis, I think it becomes a 5-game series basically instantly. And then the jungle is the wild card. That is, again, I want to give to the side of Broxer because he's been outstanding this tournament, but Ning was really second to him there. So I feel like with just say a 20% increase across those 3 roles, I see IG winning 3-2, but it's such a what-if prediction. There's so little to work with. I feel like I learned more about IG in their victory over Katie and more about Fnatic in their semifinal, which might sound surprising, but I think Fnatic in general just showed some really solid play around them that I think IG can't match. I think IG have a very good read on the meta. I think IG and Fnatic have had the best reads on the meta, so it's a treat to see them both in the final here. But I feel like IG, I really do feel like Rookie will be the difference between these two teams, and that's not to downplay Caps at all. I just feel like he's such a handful to deal with, and that no team has really gotten under his skin, barring going a full tank in the mid lane, and I don't think that's going to be Caps' style. I think he needs to be out there flexing. He needs to have the confidence in himself and in his team to take it to Rookie, and because of that, just the tournament Rookie's having, I would, again, actually follow Azael and say 3-2 IG, but I just need to start looking for real small things. It almost feels like I need to find inspiration to have a confident prediction here because there's not much to pick between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, if we look at the previous matchups that they had in group stage, you know, these two teams being in the same group was incredibly exciting to watch. And we were actually talking when we were watching the end of the group stage and the tiebreakers. We were like, wow, you know, we got back-to-back games of this matchup. Let's get a best of 5. I wish we were going to have a best of 5 of this.
Yeah, too bad they can't meet until the finals.
Turns out we get our present, you know, a couple of weeks later, because you can see so many different areas for improvement from the individual players. And the fact that more things have been shown in this extra week of semifinals, you know, with Victor coming to the top a lot too, changing a lot of champion select with Jace being such an incredible flex pick for IG, having the possibility of either of their solo laners having a very, very oppressive early game.
It's not a flex, but they both pop off on it as if they're their best picks.
Exactly. So I'm like, oh, well, if there's an IG Jace skin, what's your immediate reaction? Is that the Shy skin or is that a Ricky skin? But like, because of these extra iterations that we've seen, it does make it so much more interesting to try and go over. And I'm still waffling back and forth.
If it's a 4-game series, I think Fnatic win it. That's kind of the weird thing in my head.
So here's one thing that often
Rookie has been so good.
That often off air we analysts kind of lament about predictions is a lot of times 3-2 is your prediction when you say this is a very difficult one to call. So we're almost using the series score as how close we feel like it is. Yeah. But when you actually get on the rift, like if you're really trying to get the exact number, you're probably better off going 3-0 or 3-1 because something will click in the series, and very rarely do you get that mid-series adaptation which keeps it even enough to get to a 2-1 and then not have the team actually win the 4th game to actually push you to 5 and then still get the predictions. So I think like with your 3-2 predictions, not to put words in your mouth, you're doing that because you think the teams are closely matched.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things that's like you're making the prediction because you think they're closely matched and because this is the information that I have given. And it's also one of those things where sometimes I'll make a prediction, I'll be like, I think this team's gonna win 3-1 because they're gonna do this and then this, and then I see champion select, I'm like, well now I think they're gonna lose 3-0, and like you know it's conditional you know approach because we are not inside their mind. Like if Caps could come and tell me he's like, well I'm gonna play Urgot gotten Rush Cal every single game, then maybe my prediction changes, right?
Yeah.
Kobe,
All right,
now is the time.
Enough
for
crying,
boldness.
analysts.
Now
You're the one who can't even make a
prefaced
prediction.
that
I
while
like took
you were
like 10
watching.
minutes last episode.
There's one example where the 3-2 was actually a very real reflection of the series was Rock's SKT 2016 semis when the misfortune tech.
Man, I was just going to talk about
I'm sorry, Kobe. I can't read your mind just yet. But that's the one time where you saw adaptation be the reason for a victory.
Yeah.
But this one's
I really hope we get something like that. And something like that from a solo lane. Like a new...
Let's play a game. If it's a 3-0, who do you think wins? If I'm told you our world final was 3-0.
If it's a 3-0, I think IG wins.
I agree.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well.
Yeah,
because that feels like Soul Lane stomped you every game.
And I think they were early game wins too, where you're like, there's like 5
stuff.
kills really quickly, and you're like, oh my god, these split pushers.
Okay,
solo
then I
lanes
told you
have
it's a 3-1.
I don't like this game. I want to make my prediction.
Okay,
Make your
make
prediction
it.
then.
Make it.
No one's stopping
stop
you.
it.
Who wins, Kobe? So what about back to my game?
Your game.
Is there a time limit here?
Okay.
Is there?
Kobe loses.
Does he get a lifeline?
No.
Phone a friend. What does he say?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's probably because I am so biased for Broxa, but I think the Fnatic are gonna win.
What would the score?
I honestly, I would go with a 3-2.
Okay.
Kind of as your game you were trying to get to a point about IG winning in in solo lane smashing sort of way. I just feel like Broxa is gonna have so many chances to make corrections, and I have the faith in him to do that. Whereas Ning, you guys are talking about, I'm not quite sure even if there is a bad game for IG where early game goes out the window in large part because of jungle. I don't have the same faith that there's going to be a quick correction on his side. Whereas Rookie has had these amazing games. He gets counterpick. He smashes his lane. He roams like he's another jungler for the team and controls the side lanes is one of the things that's making it kind of difficult for me. But I think I am going to stick with the Fnatic 3-2 as of right now.
Boom.
We do have a lot more volume.
Oh, we do.
To
We do.
review, but let's go on to Jack.
My question for you would be, I also agree Broxa is better. Do you think, though, that Ning has the easier job, given that he has perhaps solo lane advantage?
I have an answer. I think Ning has a harder job
Okay.
because he has 3 lanes that play without restraint. So it's actually impossible for him to always know where the right spot is going to be, where Broxa has a higher chance of having an early game plan that he can actually follow.
Well, I mean, they can talk to each other and maybe coordinate that.
Oh, actually, you say that, but the Shy does not speak great Mandarin.
Rookie can translate.
Oh yeah, because you really want to be translating between your jungler and mid laner while you're focusing on laning against Caps.
Watch. Also,
I'm sure he can say "come top."
Well, I can just see it now.
Some nuance.
Ning is
top now.
Ning is like, hey Shy, do you want to gank right now? And Rookie's like, oh, let me translate that. Hey Shy, Ning says he can't gank for you. He has to hit.
So Fnatic 3-0, but really, my prediction in this one, with everything being prefaced, would be IG 3-1. I think if Fnatic wins, it's because they are more adaptable, they can play more styles, and they have better communication. And that's how they were kind of able to beat IG at the end of the group stage. But I do think IG has evolved a little bit since then, and the way that the priority picks have changed, I think favors IG a little bit more. I still can't get over how good the Shy was in semifinals. And I actually think it'll be IG 3-1 with the Shy winning finals MVP.
But the crazy thing is, if you ask me who the best team in terms of just pure looking at gameplay, some sort
It's
of
Fnatic.
if you
They're
had
12
to
and
give
2.
it'd be Fnatic. Just because again, they've never got snowboard on. They've always been competitive. They've just looked really clean. And that's why I have this kind of weird thing where I'm trying to grasp why IG is
Because the semifinals was so insane.
So
Sure.
one thing though,
But I'm trying to control for that, but I'm still being like those solo lanes,
One of my biggest doubts though, is their match with EDG. That series showed a disorganized Fnatic.
And Scout was outperforming Caps in that series as well.
Yeah, and I think Reckless actually referred to it in his interview a little bit afterwards.
He said they played badly, but they still won.
Yeah, but he also mentioned how specifically he felt like even when an opponent team would make a play on one side of the map, usually Fnatic are very good at recognizing their possible counterplay. Whether it is setting up a defense there or making a play on the other side of the map, that was really not on display. And that was probably their maybe messiest games that we've seen the World Championship. So that gives a little bit pause. But it's just definitely a sticky one.
Okay. Any final changes to predictions after everything?
Nope.
We got 3-2 IG, 3-2 IG, 3-2 Fnatic, and I'm 3-1 IG. You know, people are just going to latch onto that, and that's your prediction forever now. So
yeah. I mean, I still feel confident. Like I'm not sad if that happens because
it's an awesome 5-game series.
I can also construct an argument for Fnatic based on everything that's happened, right? If even if IG have the Shy does take over, Rookie does take over, and they make the finals one-sided. Yeah, I still, with the stuff that we've seen, feel fine.
Yeah, I mean, just point to that through the 3-game series that they already played, essentially, right? Like we have seen how they can win because we saw how they won, right? Like, yes, there can be changes. Yes, it could look very different in the finals, but definitely going to be a really exciting one. Yeah,
one topic I want to hit on now that we're done with the finals predictions is a bigger picture Worlds conversation, kind of about how we expect this Worlds to be remembered, because Korea had won 5 years in a row. It had been Korea versus Korea in the finals 3 consecutive years. Is this going to be the beginning of LPL dominance? Is it going to be the start of a new era? Is Korea ever going to become the same dominant force that they have been for the past 5 years? Like, I'll start with you, Papa Smithy, because you cast every LCK game this year, right? You've clearly watched Korea win 5 straight world championships. Are people going to see this as the beginning of LCK falling? Or is it going to be, oh, actually, they just came in with the wrong read on the meta and they jump back next year and are just the same?
Definitely the hindsight prediction that can easily look very foolish in a year's time. But I think when it comes to the playstyle, clearly that proved to be a problem, right? Korea was once again going risk averse, and I think there was a great translated interview with Cloud Templar, at least some stream comments where he talked about the fact that previously go for the low risk, medium reward choice at every moment because that's the reliable way. We've crunched all the scrims, we've done all the blocks, that's the way to go. And that wasn't this Worlds. This Worlds was much more about medium to high risk and a massive payoff and potential game ender from there. And that was a meta read, and that's something that can change. Like, there's some very mechanically gifted players in Korea that can adapt their styles, and I don't think that will happen again. But when you're getting more lofty about what it means in terms of the future, I think resetting up a period of dominance, a 5-year period of dominance here, is something that I think will be too tricky to get away, because while part of it was Korea fit the playstyle the best and in some cases had the best players and best coaches, there was also a psychological element to it. There was a bit of defeatism that other regions had about their chances. And in a year where Korea won nothing, apart from the LCK, and you just have to, like, yes, we won out the best region.
You can always hold on to that. Woo! We've done that in NA
World
for a while here.
Series,
Like,
but SKT still never won NALCS.
I think the floodgates are open for optimism everywhere, and that's a good thing for League of Legends.
Yeah.
Now everyone, including North America, sits back and says, we could have won Worlds.
Yeah.
A couple of things go differently and things could have happened. And that's definitely something that won't go away quickly. That would need to be beaten down multiple years in a row. And I need to know what happens in the offseason here. Because I think if the rosters stay the same in Korea, which it doesn't sound like they will, but I think if you look at this as an anomaly as Korea and say, all right, well, we lost this one, it was a meta read, whatever, let's just do it again, I think they will just find similar pitfalls that will dog them. But if they are demonized by this, if they look at this and say, no, we will never have another year like this, and holistically approach it on many different levels. We're talking players, squads, even coaching approaches to flexibility to throw out the old and really push forward with the new, then there can be change. But if money on the table, do I think there'll be another period of dominance from Korea? I would say no. And I think that China, with so many things in their core in terms of interest in the game and also player base, and also just now tangibly feeling success, and we don't know about the World Championship, but plenty of success around that. I think if you want the smart money is that will it be an LPL era of dominance like the LCK? Maybe not, but will it be LPL as big favorites more often than not? Then yes.
Yeah, and I think that the LPL is here to stay. I don't know if this is going to be the beginning of LPL dominance, and I agree with you that I don't think the 5 years of Korean reign could be replicated by 5 years of LPL reign. And to specifically talk about how I think Korea will bounce back to a point, in previous years when the LCK has come in with what we'd call a bad meta read, I feel like it was adjustable in the fact that the bad meta read was, we didn't quite know how the lane swapping was going to play out, and we weren't protecting enough against level 3 dives. So now we are going
to make it more defensive.
Level 3 dives, right? And they correct. But, and this is similar to why I think RNG failed. You spend a whole year or two practicing the way you lane to set up your mid game. Xiaohu, 2 years ago, was a spectacular laner, right? He could generate his own advantages. He could generate solo kills, but he played, I feel like, this entire year to shove mid, neutralize until team fights, and assist bot lane. And when you then have a guy like Caps or Rookie come in who's actually been playing for solo kills the whole year and has practiced that style, that's not something you can actually switch in a week of adjusting to the meta. So, like you say, if Korea adjusts to that, I think they'll be able to compete. I think they'll potentially even be a favorite if that happens. But again, I do feel like because the mental block is also removed, the floodgates are open.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a mindset thing, right? It's very hard to change your mindset of what is a good play and what is a bad play, you know, within a world championship. If it's like, it turns out Camille was pretty good. Well, I know how to play Camille. I can start playing it now. But if it's like, turns out the way I think about League of Legends is wrong, then that's like very hard to reevaluate, right? It's like, okay, you know, you only ever go for a trade if you know their jungler's on the bottom side versus IG is like, no, you trade always and the jungler can only be one of 3 places. And you win the trades in the other lanes, right? You know, like it's just a different mindset, and that is very hard to adapt to. But you know, speaking of off season, I also look to game changes, right? Like game changes are massive, and you know, that dictates a ton of it as well, right? Like, are we staying in a world where Baron is easier to attack and easy to take, or you know, are some of the changes coming through making the game favor a more defensive playstyle or re-adding more vision, right? Like we don't know where the game is going to go, and that's always something that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, to answer the original question, I think this year will be remembered as the year where Korea broke. Like, they didn't win anything, right? RNG won everything for the beginning of the year. And then this Worlds was the Worlds of upsets where everyone else was able to rise up. So it wasn't just in isolation, this little Worlds meta that everyone's talking about. It isn't just, you know, people are playing more aggressive now. RNG had already laid the groundwork for that story for this year. And up until this, I feel like this Worlds was more the like, you know, this team fighting, bottom lane centric, you know, type of thing isn't there. So I definitely think the time of Korean absolute dominance is over. I also think that Korea will do much better next year, will place higher in the World Championship. Teams like Griffin, specifically individual players like Viper, just looking at that one guy and his burst onto the scene, he is absolutely insane. Plays so many different champions. You talk about being able to adjust. This man plays actually every champion in professional play just this year.
Yeah.
And there is a lot more fresh talent, I think, in Korea as well. They're still exporting top players like Rookie and the Shy, right? Even though Rookie's been in the LPL for like 4 or 5 years or whatever by now.
He's actually going to lose his import restriction next year.
IG can get another import.
Yeah, if they really wanted to.
Regardless, I do think Korea will be strong again. But yeah, it's not going to be the oppressive, we're going to Worlds again this year. You know, which Korean team is it going to be?
And that's what I'm so excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited about actually having I feel refreshed after this World Championship, right? I think regionalism, just for the overall health of the esport, having some sort of regional diversity is really important, because if you're watching your regional NALCS, EULCS, LPL League all the time, it is hard to get excited about your success if every time you go to the World Championship, you're like, well, this whole year was useless because Korea has both teams in finals and they're clearly the best. Even the fact that it's just now murky creates such a better story coming into every international event, especially next year.
And that seed of doubt that you mentioned is the silver lining here. I know I just love watching great League of Legends, and you definitely had to reevaluate some of your parameters around that in this tournament, but we still come into the final and say the best two teams here are almost certainly there. You could argue maybe KT got a very rough draw in the end, but
Sure.
We started this tournament with two big favorites, KT and RNG. Neither of them made it there. But people kind of forget that the next three were Gen.G, which was definitely off, but IG and Fnatic were the other two. We do have one of the, I guess you would call them a dark horse, but one of those semi or big favorites. They're both there in the final. They've played the best League of Legends. They've adapted to the meta best. And that does mean that the final should be a very worthy winner, whichever way it goes. And I agree with you. The aggressive correction is what we're going to learn about Korea, because a defensive correction around what is the latest meta trend and how can we counter it, we've seen always. Griffin and a couple of teams like KT have shown aggressive corrections, but you need to be able to do both to succeed. And we come into next year, and every number one seed in a big region, people are going to look at and say, well, how do they stack up? Who will win? And that will mean even just MSI, where we only get one of them, is going to be just fascinating to understand just which meta is the right one.
I think it's also really interesting thinking about like how people are now thinking about the game, coming into Worlds versus coming out of Worlds, right? And how that perhaps affects off-season changes and everything as well, not just in Korea, but everywhere else. Coming into it, we talked about bot lane focus. I certainly felt that bot lane was by far the most important, after having watched Uzi play, and RNG play that style for so long, and so much emphasis on getting this one man ahead and feeling like it goes to the team fights. And in the team fight, the bot laner is by far the most important. You protect him or you dive him, whatever you're doing. The fights are all about that.
Tank play is really important.
Exactly.
Lining.
And this has been, pretty much categorically disproven, right? And you can make the argument, oh, well, what if RNG won game 5? Then is this conversation the same? But it doesn't matter, because that's not the world in which we are living. And, it does really make you look at it, at some of these teams, and think, okay, well, you thought this team was pretty strong coming into Worlds. Do you think this team is pretty strong coming out of Worlds? Like when you think about a team like Team Liquid, okay, well, you won back-to-back NALCS championships. You dominated regionally. But is that the type of roster that you now think has the best chance in this new world? If your goal truly is international success, a team that has never been about really solo lane carries, has always been about the bottom lane. You can say Xiaohu, oh, well, he just has to change his playstyle. Look, 2 years ago at him dominating in lane, you can't necessarily say the same about some of the other teams and some of their players, and that maybe makes you reevaluate like what style of player you're even going after, which could make the offseason pretty crazy.
Any other final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Worlds is hype. Let's go. Finals.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. That's going to wrap up the Worlds edition of The Dive. Thank you, Papa Smithy, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Sorry about the LCK, but it's still great to have you.
There's always next year.
Yeah, there's always next year. We are off to Korea. Oh, Kobe.
No, I just 100%. I think Korea will do better next year. So
silver linings. I'm learning them. You guys have just trained me up ever since quarterfinals. I've learned how to deal with this.
I completely baited production because they've already
love
done the
an
plan
underdog.
out. We're going to Korea for the finals. Invictus Gaming versus Fnatic. You could say East versus West, or you could say EU versus LPL. It all starts Friday at 11:30.
They have a Canadian coach.
Pacific
NA all the way.
time. That's when the countdown starts. Check LOL Esports for your local time zone, though, because it can get confusing. We have an hour-long countdown before the before the opening ceremony, which will then be followed by the biggest match of the year, and we will see you there.
Hype, hype, hype.
We came into this tournament as the one true Western hope, maybe you could say. I think everyone truly believed that we could do it even before the favorites were kicked out. And now that they got taken care of for us, I think it's time to reclaim that title. I think it's just a good opportunity to show that we're the best in the West for real and kick out the last of the other Western hopes. I want to be the first Western team to make it to the finals after season 1 and to represent, you know, the whole of the West and to maybe be the first world champions in season 1 that came out of the Western region. So I really, really want to beat C9 so that we can be that team. And I'm sure they feel the same way, which is why we need to be careful and we can't just take them for granted.
우리는 이제 NLCS에서 꼴찌부터 여기까지 올라온 팀이잖아요. 그래서 사실 잃을 것도 없고 우리가 북미의 마지막 희망이다라는 생각도 하고 있지도 않고 저희는 항상 매일매일이 좀 전쟁 같은 느낌이에요. 이거 못 이기면 집에 간다. 이거 못 이기면 플레이오프 못 간다. 이거 못 이기면 결승전 못 간다. 그래서 매일매일 살아남으려고 노력을 많이 하고 있고.
This is, I mean, it's basically like a once-in-a-lifetime shot to go to finals, and none of us know if we'll ever be even back at Worlds next year, or even if we make Worlds, will we get out of groups, will we make it to quarters, will we have a good chance of going to finals? You have no idea now, so while we're here, we have to make the best of it.
I don't think we have seen like a match of EU versus NA mean this much, at least not one I can remember on top of my head. So I owe my region to win this match. I really think that, I don't even know if there will be a match like this again, because sure, you can say, oh, it's not the final, but to have a semi-final be EU versus NA is completely insane, and I really owe my region, I owe my team, I owe everyone that we win this, because else there's gonna be too much flame on the EU.
When in doubt, I will trade.
Thank you. Positivity, team play, communication, fucking do it. Come on.
The results of today's best of 5 could cause a whole continent to cheer or cry out in despair. The pressure has never been higher for either of these teams.
2 teams, one from NA and one from EU, each striking down all of their opponents to arrive right here in this moment against each other in the biggest rivalry either region could have ever imagined. NA versus EU for the last spot in the World Championship Final.
On the chase, Whippos burn the flash, but into the knockup. A couple more autos coming through, but watch out, so the turret is attacking, and Sven Scarrett kills himself in the top lane, and Fnatic is not done. Something cool in his neck. He's got the chain as well. What a play! 3 kills.
Nice, let's fucking go, guys. Nice.
Fnatic are destroying Cloud9 right now. Are you kidding me?
Lane is gonna get really hard for this kid.
That's what I like to hear.
No ult for Licorice, kicked out, looking for his shield. He's not gonna get it in time. An easy shutdown. 5-0 Fnatic.
If we can break open the game, that's gonna be good for me.
Yeah. The Blank's coming down. They're looking at something, but.
Almost gets shut down with the Q. The Ignite is burning. He should stay alive, but no, it's Dax over to Wall. A TP flank, maybe something in for Cloud9, hoping to find the play as Jensen should be getting us up the route. The old, oh, it's spell shielded by Reckless. He's running away, and here comes one. Finally a kill on the board, but Braxar already answers one. Hillsong doing well, Pass, nowhere to go. Penalty for this one. Whipple gets a kill on his TP. Jensen's certain to die as well. Look at the cleanup, it's 10-1. Fnatic smashed Cloud9 in the battle of the last 2 Western teams. Fnatic are 1/3 of the way to the final.
They tried to unleash the Kraken, and Reckless just had Davy Jones' locker, you know, and he just pulls out Sivir out of the locker. I think they will either swap their bans for first 3 Victor ban, or they will first pick it.
Yeah.
There is no way they're playing another game with Victor on the other side of the team when their counter pick just miserably failed.
Stay hungry, man. Keep it up.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, we'll see it. Sneaky gonna be taking the Victor here at Worlds in the semifinals. The Victor Leona lane for the bottom. Will this be